Hey YouTube, Stampede Valkyrie here. I'm actually doing this video as a kind of tutorial and at the request of somebody else that I've been working with recently, since I seem to be the most knowledgeable one on aerodynamics for some reason. I kind of feel sorry for everybody if they think that. Anyway, I'm going to cover some basics on this real quick. Again, this is going to be super high tech, and yeah, I'm just kidding about that. But let's cover what we're looking at here. So this is an Aerodynic Model 24 light bar. To be precise, it's an Aerodynic Model EAH-T. Now, the first question I usually get asked when dealing with these lights is, what do the letters mean behind the actual model number? Well, there's three basic model numbers that the Aerodynic uses. There's the Model 22, which is a mini bar. There's the Model 24, which is what we see here. The Model 24 actually has the speaker grill in the middle that you see. And then the Model 25. And the Model 25 was an all-light version of the Aerodynic. There was no speaker grill, obviously. That was deleted. And there were all lights in here instead. The letters in the back of the bar, or on the back of the model designation, designate in this series what features or what options were actually included with the bar from factory. So the E stands for end lamps. That's these guys right here. I'm talking about the forward and rear facing lights on the sides, or on the ends, here and here. The A stands for alleys, alley lights. Alley lights are these guys right here. Kind of hard to see them there as I'm trying to do this and hold the camera at the same time. Another alley light obviously over on this side here. The H stands for halogen. Now, the Aerodynic, and its very many different revisions of the Aerodynic in this series, use different types of bulbs. The H or halogen bulbs were H1 bulbs, and if you get real close and take a look here, you'll see that is an H1 bulb. That's a halogen bulb right there. So there's your halogen. So you've got the E for end lamps, you've got the A for alley, and you've got the H for halogen bulbs. Now, the final thing, and it's not really common, but it's worth pointing out, is the T, which is takedown. Now, takedown bars weren't real common, but it was an additional feature that was available on the Aerodynic, the Model 24 and the Model 25 Aerodynics, for an additional cost from Federal. So in this instance, and I tried to make this a little bit easier so it stands out, the takedown lamps were normally on the passenger side, which is this side of the bar. Since we're looking at the front, you can see the grill here, and then the driver's side of the bar. So here, what would normally be an end lamp is actually a takedown light. Now, really, all this is a higher wattage par 36 bulb. In this instance, it's a GE4464, which I think, and I'll be corrected in the comments, I guarantee it if I get this wrong, is a 60-watt bulb. I believe it's a 60-watt bulb. Now, really, beyond the fact that it's a higher wattage bulb, it is also not connected to any flasher or any other mechanism. It's on its own circuit, which is actually over here on the wiring block, and that links to that bulb. Now, in this instance, and I tried to make it a little bit clearer because I get this very frequently asked this question, this yellow wire is the lead for the takedown bulb. And if you look, you'll see the yellow wire then goes into the bar, which then travels underneath and comes out the other side, kind of like a rainbow explosion. Yeah, that's actually kind of funny. Anyway, so you'll see the yellow line coming up, around, and down right there. That's the separate line specifically for the takedown. In other words, that's basically when you apply power to that, that light comes on. It's the takedown light. If you apply power to the flashers or the other end lamps, since they're sitting on a can flasher, which is here, obviously, can flasher, this is a not quite good can flasher. This one's a spastic can flasher is what I call this. Another story, long story. Anyway, so when I apply power to the can flasher, one of the rear on one of the wires coming in, it will flash these end lamps. However, the takedown light will not. It's on its own separate circuit, powers up by itself, hence the reason takedown. Now, there's one other thing I also like to talk about here since we're looking at the bar without domes. I forgot to add, no domes on this bar currently. We're just looking at the basics. If you look on the sides of the speaker grill, or the sides of the speaker grill on the bulkheads, these are called bulkheads, you'll see these silly little mirrors. They were designed or put there by Federal only on light bars that had alley lights. Now, the theory behind that is that while these guys spin around and flash, the end lamp, or the alley lights, would block the flash from the side of the bar, affecting side warning. So in all their Federals, in all their geniusness, they created these guys. And these are just basically mirrors. That's all they are. And what it does is it's supposed to reflect the flash from the inner rotators, or the actual geared rotators, out to the ends of the bar. Now here's the downside to this. Obviously, if you look at the bar and how it's set up, those mirrors actually directly affect the flash on that inner rotator. And if I get down and look, you'll see that that mirror actually does a pretty good job blocking the inner rotator. So in essence, you're giving up some of the front and rear flash warning for side warning. And to be honest with you, this bar was not necessarily known for having a really powerful side warning profile. And yes, the designs with the alley lights actually do impact side warning. That's about it. A lot of people ask me, hey, why does my bar not have these mirrors? To put it bluntly, if your bar does not have the A option in it for alley lights, it will not have those mirrors. Simply put. I mean, there's really no other way for me to go about that. So we're looking at the front of the bar right now. The other things that are worth talking about while I have the bar open and while we're sitting here discussing it are the gears themselves. Now, the other really neat thing about the Aerodynic is the fact that you can customize the flash pattern since these are geared, and how this works is actually pretty simple. So you'll see towards the back of the bar we've got the motor, and if you look down there upside down, you can actually see the other thing worth talking about. This is the actual name tag. Oftentimes when I talk to people, I'll say, hey, what model number do you have? And this is where those letters come into play. They're telling you, the Model 24, there's the E, the A, the H, and then the T, obviously upside down because we're looking at it from upside down. You'll see 12 volts, obviously because it's a 12-volt bar, and then the series. Now, this is an A1 bar with a stamp of an H. This is later on in this lifespan for the Aerodynic. Really, the series only really comes into play when you're looking at older bars versus newer bars, and some of the revisions that take place while the bar was in production or while these models were put out. The A1H older series bar, there are some differences that I'm not going to go into in this video between the later and the newer series, and if you're familiar with the Aerodynics, you probably already know what I'm talking about, so we'll keep it on track. The motor, the drive cage. Inside here, if I get my finger out of the way, we've got the worm gear and what I call the clutch gear, this guy right here. What happens is the motor here drives the worm gear, which is not really visible here. It's behind it. You can kind of see it a little bit right in here. Drives the clutch gear here, which spins. This in turn then spins this gear here. This gear makes contact with one of the idler gears that sit here, which in turn spin all the other gears, hence you get the gear-driven Aerodynic. Now, the only difference here with this one compared to the ones that are 10 rotator, so on and so forth, is that with the Model 25s and the 10 rotator Aerodynics, there are additional reflectors and gears in the center section. The Model 24s don't have that. The Model 24 has a gear which can be found here, and there's actually a belt underneath the bar, if I would take this out. The belt then goes under this section, connects to this gear right here on the other side, which in turn then keeps the bar spinning, or basically spins the other rotators. One of the first things I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if you're going to work on this bar, always disconnect the motor from the other gears. This gear right here, the clutch gear, is next to impossible to find unless somebody can find somebody 3D printing them, and if you can, hook me up because I need a bunch of these. I'm trying to fix these lights. It's one of the harder gears for me to find. That gear is plastic. The worm gear coming off that motor is metal. As we all know what happens when metal meets plastic, metal wins all the time. So what you do is, if you want to work on this, change the light sequences, so on and so forth, you want to make sure you take these two screws off. One here, one here. The motor will literally just come off. It's really not that hard. And then you'll have access to the actual idler gears and then the actual rotator gears themselves. Now, the other thing I get asked frequently is, what about timing settings for these rotators? How do I make this light flash in different sequences? It's actually very, very simple and often overlooked. If you're familiar with Federals literature, you might know exactly what I'm talking about here. So with this motor out of the way and off, obviously we're assuming that we've taken it off, you'll get down and you'll look at the bar and you'll notice that in front of each reflector is a little line right there. Gotta love the little spider remnants there too. I haven't cleaned this bar up yet. There's a line there. you'll notice that there is no line in the idler gear, but there is a line here. Again, no line, a line, other side, another line, no line, line, no line, line. Now, the first question I get asked is, what the hell do those lines mean? Well, those lines are where you set the timing for what flash pattern you want. On a lot of my videos, you'll see me say, hey, my flash pattern is 8, 10, 12, yada, 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 X, 8, 10, 12, whatever. Those numbers are actually printed on the gears. So if you look, if I can get in here real close, you'll see that's a 12. The next one over here is a 10. Need to clean this, obviously. So on and so forth. And the numbers go around. So it goes from 0 to, I think it's 12 is the highest. Nope, I'm wrong. 14, 16, 18. I apologize. 0 to 18. Actually, 19 to be the highest. But the 18 is the highest number printed. What you can do then is set these guys up, the ones with the lines. The number you want corresponds with that dot or with that line. Then what you would do is, with these idler gears out of the way, you'd spin the rotator around to where you want it to be, drop the idler gear back into place, do the same thing as until you get the timing right on each of these rotators until you get to the very end. That sets your timing. This gives you that neat patterns like outside in, or safe warning, or even the famous Knight Rider thing that you'll see very frequently on the 10 rotator aerodynamics. The only thing I will talk about, and it's a pain in the butt with these Model 24s, is changing the timing settings on these guys right here. And the reason why it's a pain in the butt for this is that you can get to this guy. That's easy. But in order to get to this guy, you need to take this whole thing off. That's a pain in the butt, especially on some of the older bars. So what I've done, and your mileage may vary on this, is I will actually loosen the nut here that holds these guys in place, and I will apply pressure one way while applying pressure the other way until this actually separates. Then very slowly I will spin that gear without stripping gears until I get it where I want it to be. Really, the inner rotators in the Model 24 bars are probably the biggest hassle to try to adjust. You'd have to do the same to both sides until you get where you want it to be. And once you've got it there, then work your way out. Start with this one obviously first, then work your way out, obviously, until you get to the end. Once they're all in place, you're good to go. It will not lose those settings unless the teeth, which back in here again, are worn and these gears are skipping. Now, unfortunately, again, these are 30, 35-year-old bars, and the plastic does wear out. It happens. So another thing that's worth noting right now and just talking about while I've got this open before I actually wrap this up, since trying to keep this simple, but I'm pushing 13 minutes as we go. Maintenance. People ask me, hey, how do I maintain this bar? Really, it's not that hard. Remember that halogen bulbs, the H1 bulbs that we have here, do not go well with human oils from your fingers. So if you ever have to take a bulb out, and taking one of these bulbs out is pretty simple. All you really need to do is get a screwdriver. And with the screwdriver in hand, you're going to come down here, loosen that screw up, and then that same screw is on the other side. You can see it a little bit right there. And once these are loose, you don't have to take them out. This will slide out. You basically can rotate these things. This will come off, and off it comes. It's really easy to do. To put them back in, basically, once you've got it out, you pop the wire lead that comes out of the bottom back into the band or the blades receptor on the H1, back down, and reverse the process. Now, obviously, you're going to touch that bulb. Well, you've got human oils on it now. What you want to do from there is get yourself some isopropyl alcohol and wipe the bulb down once it's installed. That'll basically dissolve any human oils and guarantee that the halogen bulb won't rupture because of anything you have on your hands. So now, we've talked about bulb replacement. Bulb replacement on these guys is actually even simpler. All you need to do is undo this latch, and you'll see on the back, there's 2 wire leads. You undo those wire leads, the bulb falls out, you're good to go. Very, very easy. The next most common thing that I get asked is, oftentimes, if you're using one of these lights, as the light's running, you'll hear it making all sorts of noise. Sometimes you might hear rattling or wobbling. That's because the rotators aren't spinning freely anymore. And what you want to do is you actually want to clean and then grease the rotators on the bar. Now, I'll try to show this.
Federal documentation is a little bit more. As we get down here, you'll see this guy right here where I'm pointing. Now, unfortunately, the camera's going to fade out on me. All right, so if you look real closely at what I'm looking at there, you'll see there's a dot. Now, bear with me. Again, I'm using a cell phone for this. Sorry, I am not a professional YouTuber. I'm just trying to help some people out. So you see where that thing is pointing? Hold on, right there. That circle-looking thing. That's an access port for grease. What you can do is take like a grease gun, similar to what you use on like an automobile, and you would grease like the differential or the linkage points on a vehicle. You want to grease those as well. Those need to be greased. You also want to make sure you can grease these guys. Now these guys are a little different. You can actually take these completely off without unbolting this piece. You can take this off, clean the post, since it'll just be a post at that point, then grease the post and put the reflector or put the idler gear back on. Once you've done that to each one of these guys, you'll notice the bar will actually operate a lot smoother. So you're looking at a grease point on this bar, for example, being an EAH. You're looking at a grease point of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Technically 6 if we go on the inside, but I don't really judge, or I don't really get into the one on the inside very frequently. So you're looking at 6 grease points per bar, and that way this thing operates smoothly. Usually, because these bars are 30 plus years old, they haven't been operated on in a very long time. That grease is old, it is nasty, very nasty. Make sure you're wearing some gloves when you clean these things up, and when you put everything back in, give it a good amount of grease. I don't say you have to slap it all over the place like you're cooking some bacon, but again, I'm trying to make the funny. You want to use enough grease that it to liberally apply it, so that way at least it spins around and gets where it needs to be. That's about it. The only other thing I guess I could add quickly, as again now I'm pushing 17 minutes, is the different types or different models of Aerodynic. Another question I get asked a lot is, hey, what is my bar worth? Well, to be honest with you, it's only really worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. In this instance, because this has the takedown light and it's an EAHT, this is more uncommon than the standard EAH or EA bars or whatever else you're going to go with, because it's got the takedown option. But to be honest with you, as I've already pointed out, you could turn an EA or an EAH or even an EE bar into an ET or whatever you want to call it takedown just by adding a higher wattage bulb there and taking this end lamp, the yellow wire that you see coming out here, putting it on its own circuit. That's really all it's doing. It's not really doing anything else. Just an FYI. I get asked these questions enough that it's worth me making a video on it. Other than that, I think we're good. I mean, you can see I kind of have a cut power wire there, so that's not very long. I guess I could talk a little bit about, before I wrap this up, the wiring block that comes into here. As I said before, here's your flasher. This one actually has an onboard flasher. Not all Aerodynics have onboard flashers. Some companies actually had the flashers off the bar, usually wired in series with the wiring coming in. Then you'll actually have some of your other colors here. Each of these colors represents a different function. Red is always primary power unless somebody wired it goofy. If you see red is primary power. That spins the rotators. Basically, hits the motor, spins the rotators. Your grounding wire you can see coming here actually grounds into the frame right there. That's your ground. Obviously, like any DC application, red is positive, and black is negative, so on and so forth. You have some other light colors in here. Each of these colors represents a different feature on the Aerodynic. Going off memory, and again, I'll get corrected to this because I'm probably going to goof this up. I believe the orange wire is one of your alley lights. The green wire, I believe, is another alley light. The blue wire is end lamps. I believe the yellow wire is also end lamps. There are gray wires in here. The gray wire can actually activate another function if the bar had it. And there are also brown wires, usually brown wire and then brown wire with a white stripe. Those are your speaker wires. In this bar, kind of looks like the gray wires were actually put in here. I don't think that's factory. I think this was actually done post-factory. I might be wrong. I don't know. I haven't actually torn this thing fully down yet. You'll also notice that as I'm looking at this bar, colors are mixing here, and that's specifically because coming off this can flasher, The ends coming off that are black, so on and so forth. So don't use what I'm saying as total mantra. Get a hold of the Federal manuals, or the manuals for the Aerodynic, which are still actually found, thank God, from Federal's website. Learn the wiring schematics so you know what you're looking at. Other than that, these bars really aren't that hard to work on. In the event that I had to access this, I would actually take these 3 screws out. These are actually just flathead screws. I usually will soak them a little bit because these have been sitting for how long. So I might hit them with some like penetrant, anything like WD-40 or anything so on and so forth, like break free, whatever you want to use. So hit them there for a little bit and then try to work them out. Sometimes they do get stuck. Don't strip them out. It's a real pain in the butt. Keep in mind that the center section is actually 3 separate pieces. The front part here with the grill slots is for the front of the speaker. This top bar here is a stainless steel strip, just holds the 2 pieces down. And the back bar right here. The other thing worth noting is that when you do take this out, you will also have to loosen up 3 screws on the bottom. 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there. Now you don't have to take those out. You just need to loosen them up. There is a black sheet of metal. If I can get this thing to cooperate with me with one hand. You see it right there. It's kind of off color with the aluminum base. That is actually holding the bottom of the speaker section, or at least this side of the speaker section, down. Loosening up those screws, and they are known. They are very, very much known to seize in there. So take your time. You don't want to snap them off and take them to a machine shop because then you're going to have to tap them out. That's one of the pain in the butts about working with bars with aluminum bases. But once you actually take those screws, just back them out, and with these guys off, you'll actually be able to pull this off and get access to the center section. The center section is actually hollow. There's nothing in here. There's no speaker in this bar, but there's hollow. There is actually a piece of metal, though, or a rod, which sits about right there and goes across. And all that is, and there's one here and one on the other side. The only point of that is to actually keep the integrity of the speaker or the speaker in place. Well, that's about it. As you can see, the light has actually gone out on my phone. Probably yelling at me because my battery's dying. Hopefully this was informative. I can add more if somebody wants to see more. Again, I'm doing this because I was requested of me to do this. If this video kind of sucks, sorry. I'm trying to help. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your Aerodynics and keep them running because these bars are really neat and they're really not that hard to work on.